thank you all for coming today. Thank you for coming today, and any of our online visitors, thank you for your attention today during our presentation. Today, we have the opportunity to share a presentation with you of work that we've been doing in Nepal for the past 8 years. We are super lucky today to have our colleague Soham Subedi, who is going to be presenting the work that he does in the field, on the ground, and keeps everything moving. So all the really hard stuff that you almost never hear about, he is here to give us the sunny side of that, but also the underbelly if needed. So I just want to present a few slides to talk about the project overall, what we've been doing. Soham will join me up here and will lead you through some of the activities as they are in the field, show you a few small videos that speak to this work in a visual way. And then our other colleague, Ali she will be talking about some of our results, our quantitative results, which we are almost just waiting for that decision, and then they will be published. So this is the Change Starts at Home project is a curricularized intervention. It is a long intervention, as you will see. We have 3 phases here, and we've added more. But the first part is really to think about critical reflection. So these are group-based activities, men and women in communities, where they use the structure of a radio program, a radio drama, around which a curriculum has been designed to critically reflect on norms, how they affect their lives, how their relationship has been functioning. Moving into phase 2, so that was about 3 months of work on a weekly basis. Phase 2 also is about 3 months, and that's where it's more skill building. So communication, conflict resolution, consent, all these aspects of relationship skills that are not necessarily normative, but oftentimes are not developed when there is perhaps less interaction prior to marriage, and less mixing of men and women. So the last phase of our original curriculum, which is also 3 months, which is where originally 8 years ago, we would have pushed out all of our activities, the community-based. It's like moving out from the group out into the community. In this particular iteration, this phase 3 was much more skill building, advocacy building in the group setting, preparing and working with community organizations to then have an extended diffusion phase, which Soham will talk much more about. So if you are talking to an organization and they are like, we are going to diffuse our work, a couple of things you need. One, you need impact. So everybody's like, well, how do we diffuse our programming? First of all, you have to know that you're actually making a change. There's nothing to diffuse if there's no change in the first place. So this project, over the last 8 years, we have shown more and more evidence of impact. And as I mentioned, we're going to give you the highlights of our most impactful work to date. But it is built in from the beginning. We have now done this thing enough times to understand how to curricularize the diffusion process and how to build it in even at the formative phase of our projects. So we have been working in different districts over these 8 years. We've been working in 3 different districts. We consolidated down for a second phase into 1 district. And here we are again consolidating our areas. So what we say here is, in order to diffuse the work, we need to be much more intentional about the areas and know much more about them in terms of social networks, geographic scope, where people go, who they talk to understand what are the potential pathways through which programming will go. So we went down further into the municipality and ward and village level in 2 municipalities in Nawalpur district. So The second piece is the sort of interpersonal piece of diffusion. So we focused much more intensively in phase 2 and in this current phase, phase 3 of the project, in trying to understand what are those networks within the communities, who's talking to whom about relationship issues, who's giving advice, where does the support happen? Because we know that formal help seeking is incredibly low in most countries in the world, and that is also applies in Nepal. But we do know friends and relatives are the primary arbiters of what's going on in the household. So we work to measure this qualitatively and quantitatively, but also to be mindful in terms of the activities, in terms of how we are engaging with the social networks to help push these activities out. Here you see a snapshot of these 12 sessions. So we expanded those three little pieces of the pie you saw, to 12 additional sessions. And this was run, I think, over 8 months, 6 to 8 months. So in addition to the 9 months weekly intensive work, there is now 12 additional focus sessions in the group setting, but also with outside actors, local leadership, other CBOs. So all of this is a series of activities. And sorry, I've cut off part of our curriculum, but it is fully curricularized, how we then very intentionally work the programming from this heavy group setting to community-based activities. So now I'm going to invite my colleague Soham to describe this incredibly rich and intensive work that goes on at the community level.
Yeah, thank you, Cari. We did several activities, but I am going to share one of them. That's the BFCC. It represents the diffusion activity from the perspective of the sustainability. We were having diffusion activity. There are several, even more than thousands activities on deep dives and other activities. So within that, we came to know that recent federal system in Nepal, they have several structures in local level. They can respond the events or activities in from the perspective of the intimate partner violence or violence against women or other social justice issues. But they don't have the prevention mechanism in the local level. So local government requested a violence-free community campaign at the ward level. That Change Started Home project started to declare the violence-free homes in the community. And community networks, they also participated in the diffusion activities and agreed to form violence-free community campaigns. So the violence-free community campaign kicked off in the community. So I have Nepali videos. I just play it, but not the sound. I just explain a bit. So firstly, we organized several workshops that is for the traditional healers, community leaders, and government officials. So institutionally and individual level, they committed to create violence-free communities, and municipality heads, they also supported to this campaign. Then 1186 households declared their homes violence-free because the government and community networks and all were in this campaign. The flag offering events, whoever they declared their homes violence-free, so they put the flags in the homes, and the ward chairs and community networks, they all accepted those pleads and all the things. So it is started. And after declaring homes violence-free, then we organize appreciation events. We provided appreciation letters to the households who declare their homes violence-free. Then the others who wants to declare their homes before declaring, there are several points they have to follow from the perspective of the violence-free home. Appreciation even municipality heads and others representatives from the community and the leaders, they also uh, participated in the event. So all villagers and community members, they are quite accepted these violence-free community campaigns. So in two municipalities, what is the violence-free community campaign means? It means it started from the households, but we have to declare the hamlets and communities as well as the wards, then the municipality. So proposed VFCC structures like that. This violence-free community declaration and implementation committee in the hamlet or village level, that's the unit that will support in the village level, then the ward level and municipality level. And we are expecting that the local bills will endorse in the municipality and they will declare the violence-free municipality, but we have to go a lot. I mean, it's not easy job. Only one project can't do everything, but it can start something. That's it. Thank you. I think Harry can explain more about, she know everything, but I'm just, thank you for giving me a chance to speak something, if I able to do best.
That was perfect. Stay here, stay here with me.
Thank
He ran away. Stay here, Soham.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. So, as Soham said, the VFCC's violence-free community committees formed sporadically or spontaneously from the work that we were doing. So this was one of the innovations of this intensive community-based work, is that this community level organization, the local government, the local CBOs were like, as Soham said, we don't have a mechanism to get money or do activities for prevention, because most of it was around shelter or mediation of couples that were having fights or violence. So these sort of organically developed VFCCs are particularly beautiful because they are comprised of local government. They have women's rights groups, they have disability groups, they have forestry groups. So the representation in this one group is much more holistic and diverse than you would normally get from sort of a typical committee, which, you know, you'll have a women's committee or you'll have some sort of finance or committee, a religious committee. This one brings everybody together, thinking about violence prevention holistically across all these different activities. In a final phase of this work, we got an extension on this project and we were able to start measuring whether or not these committees are a sustainable way for project activities to go, which is one of the reasons that Soham is here, is that we're working on documenting and trying to publish this work because we've been using an implementation science perspective to try to foster the sustainability of these VFCCs in these two municipalities, with the hopes that over time they will be able to continue to receive money, because many of them have already established themselves as a local organization and they have received monies and they have done activities in addition to some small grant activities that were available through the project. We are hoping in the future to be able to use them, to work with them as a mechanism to sustain the programming once donor funding is ceases, because donor funding always ceases. Every project, regardless if it's violence, whatever the project is, funding goes away at some point. So our work here was really to see, and you'll hear about how impactful it is, whether or not we have the ability to sustain at least some parts of those activities. A lot of the work that Soham was talking about is that this is a social norms focused social and behavior change communication strategy. So we use communication in a number of ways. We talked about the radio drama. If you've ever administered groups, you know that it depends a lot on the facilitator. Is the facilitator good? Are they good at communicating? Do they hold the types of values and attitudes that you will need to be able to talk about gender equality? While the team works really hard to screen and support and scaffold the facilitators over time, they also know that there's always this variability. And you'll know it because when you go to a class, your teachers are all different. They're all different in how they do their job. Some of them may be better at X, some are better at Y. Same with the facilitators. But with the radio drama and a curricularized session, the radio drama, you know what message they're getting. At the core of the intervention and these group activities, it is entertaining, it is believable, and it is standardized, which is really hard to do in a community-based setting. And we can talk later if you're interested about all the development of that radio program, because that is a whole part of the phase 1 of the project, how that storyline developed, how the community was involved in helping to evolve that storyline over time to where it does talk about many of these activities around sort of skills and norms that we're trying to reinforce with the curriculum. The outward-facing events are designed to try to bring awareness, not just awareness, but like reinforce people's conceptualization that the norms are changing. They are changing. They're always changing. And here, when you see people put a flag on their house, they're telling their neighbors, they're telling their community, this is a violence-free house. If they're lying, the community member will let them know. That's called a sanction, a negative sanction. They're putting themselves up to be like, yeah, right? Come on, buddy. But when you start to see, you don't know if you think you know, or maybe you do know, but part of norms change is about really understanding what is actually happening in the community in terms of attitudes, values. How do your neighbors behave? And in very tight places, you hear them, whatever, but you don't necessarily know everybody in the community. So when you see the whole community or all your neighbors put up this flag, they're sending a message visually to all persons that this house, this community is violence-free. So the shift from the household base, as Soham mentioned, up to the community level, up to the municipal level, because with Soham's, through his amazing diplomacy and work and support and scaffolding, and you don't know this, but he is absolutely the nicest human being. So you will only get to interact with him briefly today, but literally he is the nicest, kindest, most engaging human being. So they've moved this up to the municipal level. So that's huge. That's a huge step in 6-8 months. So he's also very modest. So I just wanted to pull those pieces together because you said all of this, but I know you and I know the work. But collectively, between this deep work with couples, their networks, their families, and this reinforcing messaging at the community level, which is also very entertaining, collectively, this is our sort of social norms intervention. So I'm going to turn it over. Soham and I will both turn it over to Allie, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we're measuring impact and how we're measuring diffusion.
Carrie. Hello, everyone. I want to just talk about some of our time points that we included in the study to measure the impact of these different programming elements at different phases of the project. So first, we had a baseline assessment. This is where, before we rolled out that couples curriculum, we were assessing people on their attitudes, norms, etc., and also intimate partner violence. After the couples curriculum, so this includes components like the radio drama that Carrie was talking about, those curricularized sessions. We did a midline assessment, seeing immediate change in our samples. I'll talk about the samples in a moment. Then between midline and our endline assessment, this is where that diffusion curriculum is being implemented. So individuals are working on skills to spread the messaging that they learned in their couples curriculum out into their networks and communities. Between end-line and follow-up, so this is our fourth time point here, this is where these VFCCs, the groups that Soham discussed, sprang up organically. And so there was no formal programming with the Change Starts at Home project between end-line and follow-up. I should say follow-up here. But this time point really measures some of the effects of the VFCCs. We had a couple different samples in order to look at change, not just with our couples that were in the programming, but their networks and community members. So LDAGs, these are our participants who attended those couples groups. These stands for listening, discussion, and action groups. All of the LDAGs lived within our intervention sites. We also included individuals in our sample who did not directly participate in our couples curriculum, but lived in the intervention communities. So if you think about proximity to this couples curriculum, they're one step removed in the community. So they also lived in the intervention sites. We also assessed control members who were in adjacent communities. So they weren't exposed directly to the programming, and they are several steps removed from individuals theoretically who received the intervention directly. Although, because these communities are pretty small, we did anticipate that possibly some of the programming would eventually diffuse to these control sites. And then I'm going to talk about what's called our alter sample. This was a group of individuals intentionally selected from the different samples social networks. So all of the LDAGs, community, and control members identified individuals who they were close with, who were in their network. They had to live in some of the communities that we were measuring. So we assessed for each of these participants, one individual in their network. Those are the alter samples. Or that is the alter sample. I'm going to focus first on the results for the LDAG individuals. Again, these were most directly exposed to the intervention works, specifically like the couples curriculum and the radio programming, and then the diffusion activities. And I'm going to compare first their results to these control members. So I've got this time plot here with our 4 different assessments, and we've got our 3 different groups here. Relative to control women, LDAG women, our most directly exposed individuals, saw improvements in several outcomes. First and foremost, IPV, that's really what we wanted to see a change in. That's intimate partner violence, so decreases in violence. That's the goal of the project. But we also saw improvements in outcomes related to IPV, for example, norms. And we saw improvements in gender equitable attitudes, relationship quality, communication, GBV advocacy. These are all concepts that were touched on in the couples curriculum. So we saw a lot of improvement for our most directly exposed individuals relative to this gray line here is our control individuals. We see the biggest changes between baseline and midline. Again, this is when that couples curriculum was being implemented, but we do see continued improvements from midline to endline and follow-up. Again, the VFCCs were occurring in this time point here. We also see improvements in our community group women. This is the group of women who did not directly participate in the couples curriculum, but were in the intervention communities. So we're seeing that violence is also decreasing for these women as well. In general, community women tended to improve in outcomes, as did our LDAG women, sometimes less so, which we would expect. But we saw generally improvement for our community women as well. This is evidence partially of possibly diffusion of this programming. So if our community women are improving, even though they weren't directly exposed to programming, that shows that there could be some positive impact on people in the networks of the LDAGs. We also looked at the LDAG or the alters specifically. Again, the alters were individuals who are in the social networks of these different groups. So looking here at our 3 different colored lines, The blue line here, this is the alters of LDAG. So people in the women LDAGs social networks. And what we're seeing is that there was improvement in these alter groups. There was more improvement for alters of LDAGs than alters of control members, but it was pretty modest. We can see here, this is a variable for, this is injunctive norms. We're seeing positive improvement over time. That's good for this variable. And we can see that all of the groups tend to be improving over time. And we're seeing some more improvement in our LDAG alters than our gray line, the control alters, but it's pretty modest. So generally what we were finding with the alter samples, the individuals in our social networks of these different LDAG community and control groups, is that we were seeing some improvements in both norms and related outcomes, but it was relatively modest. So some evidence possibly of diffusion, but relatively weak evidence for these samples. We also looked at men. We had men in these samples as well. So men were included in the couples curriculum and also the diffusion activities. In general, relative to women, we were seeing less robust improvements of LDAG men relative to LDAG women. This variable, again, is injunctive norms, so improvement is good for this variable. And we can see that over time, our groups tend to increase or tend to improve, but this gray line, the control group, tends to be improving just as much as our intervention groups. So if we're looking for change in our LDAG groups above and beyond the change in our control groups, we weren't seeing it as much for men. This leads us to think that maybe the change starts at home curriculum, at least in this iteration, was having stronger impacts for women than it was for men. That's something we've been looking at with our data, why that might be. And I think that's my part.
Lovely.
Thanks.
All right. Soham, if you want to come up. So overall, in terms of, I would say, the novelty of these findings and really starting to track the pathways for diffusion, I would say we're right there. We're on the edge. So keep your eye on this team. Yeah, we have grant applications to shift this into phase 4, where we'd like to support the sustainability and to see if we can keep the findings or keep the impacts alive.
Great one. A couple of questions.
Yes.
Maybe start with you. It's always nice to see controlled trials because it allows you to know attribute to the program, even though you can't control everything. So that's not easy to do and justify when we're doing these kinds. People don't want to support collecting data on a control. We just do it until it works. We don't care what happens. So that's the rigor of the research. Minor question is, you saw some of those improvements in norms across all the groups. How significant is that? In other words, what's that magnitude of change relative to, say, the rest of the literature? Is that, how much of that could be them just getting better at answering the questions, or does it really, I'm just wanting to get a sense of the magnitude.
Do you want to talk statistically, and then I can talk
Or even just,
interpretation?
even if it's not statistical, I mean, is that meaningful? Is, I guess, my question.
Yes, so I will say
It goes from 3 to
programmatically,
4.
yes,
How much of that's
come back to,
learning effect? No, not that one. The where you said
for men?
everybody- Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
that's-
I mean, we saw improvement also for women. So here's violence, so experience of IPV. You can see this gray line, the control group.
Yeah, that one I'm not questioning. That's dramatic.
Yeah.
But I'm referring to the alters, and I mean, if you think of that as the background, right? We didn't do anything. That's really what it's saying. We never went there. This is what would have happened, but I just wanted to contextualize. It's going from 3.5 to 4. What does that mean over a period of 2 years?
So
Are they shifting norms?
maybe, yes, maybe I can talk. So this is also the men's, this is a visual of the men's who, on average, changed very little. Very little. The other thing that I want to highlight, and this is, so I want to talk the stats and get them out of the way first. And then talk, is this a meaningful finding? In terms of the men, no, there's like really almost nothing going on except for a few of the subcategories that are specifically related to like advocacy, helping a survivor, the kinds of things that they were working on directly in the groups. And then the LDAD men really showed improvement that exceeded what was happening in the other groups. But for those of you who have anything to do with a very diverse set of communities, these are the same communities. This is the neighboring one. This one was chosen specifically based off of a household listing around what of the neighboring communities these individuals had connections to, because we were scaffolding the diffusion. So these communities are under the same government leadership structure to facilitate that, but they're extremely different. So statistically, we dealt with this. Just
Yeah, all you can do double difference, so that's going to be easy.
yes, so these are very significant. In terms of social norms, they're changing. They're changing. They've already been changing. If you talk to people on the ground in terms of what is pushing many of the changes, it's education, 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 which has been rapidly increasing, particularly for women, but also for men. And why am I talking about Nepal when I have Soham right here? But let me just talk about statistically the meaningfulness of the changes. So part of our original randomized control trial, to just be clear, this is a quasi-experimental trial, quasi-experimental, because we had to choose them intentionally based on networks. We found that you see norms change that is statistically significant in the intervention communities, regardless of where they started out, but you see meaningful changes in social norms in the communities that started out with very, very gender and unequal norms at the beginning. So like, if we were to stratify this by what is the baseline sort of normative environment, you would see massive differences in those that had the most growth potential. So in terms of good news for norms, the thing is about our pathways normatively through networks, you know, the network, the interpersonal networks they're not the only pathway. We have all of this community embeddedness, all of these layers of intentional synergies. We might have expected more. We did expect more change in the alters, particularly of the LDACs. We see there are some improvement.
So can you go to the alters response? I guess my question is, because it's all, you know, it's how you do your scale, right?
Yeah.
Is going from 3 to 4.5.
So this is huge because
That's what I was trying to get.
The reason
because
is
that
1 to 5.
Yeah. As if nothing
Oh no,
happened,
1
right?
to 5.
Yeah, so that's all I was trying to
Yes, so this is
capture.
big, but you see everyone's also improving.
Right. And
So eventually it would be nice to have a historical trend, because this will also tell us, I mean, they're changing.
yeah. And so I guess alternate hypothesis is it because of just general norms change, or what you're commenting on, where people start and diffusion is differential? You see what I mean? Because this is a different diffusion, right? You're saying diffusion over time, but diffusion across groups. And
Yeah.
this is supposed to, you're saying, I didn't talk to these guys.
We
But-
did not
Yeah,
specifically,
you didn't
no.
target them, but did it diffuse to their networks?
We do ask the alters, we ask all of the people in our sample their exposure to different programming elements. So have you attended a session? Have you participated in the violence-free, the VSCP? Have you shown a flag? And what we're seeing, at least for the alters, is that the alters of LDAGs are participating in these change starts at home
Some of
programming
my
as
suggestion
more.
is, as Cari said earlier one, if you've done sort of stratified analysis to say differential response, it might be interesting to do it
For the normative
this
findings.
group as well. Because you may find interactions there.
Most likely, our
You might find
previous
interactions
works,
there,
yes.
and I'm really curious the interactions for the men, because throw them away with the dishwasher.
We're not, they are so
Because that's the
critical.
goal, right? I mean, at the end, you want, it's couples counseling, and it's going to be, if you can get the.
Well,
Yeah.
and we're,
We kind of know if the women didn't respond, then you would have said, it was targeted.
but this is something we have to work on, and also in terms of our measurement with men, because you don't get reductions in violence against women if
Without-
if you're not
without-
impacting the men.
Yeah.
And where we feel like we're on solid ground is that you see the impacts for women. They're saying they have better communication,
Right.
they have more consensual sex, all these other factors in our theory of change that would lead you to believe that there's a reduction in violence. Because if you just have a reduction in violence, but like none of the other
Yeah, it's
pathways, it's like, that sounds like reporting bias, like we know what we're supposed to say over
Right.
time kind of thing, which we can never completely remove because everyone's getting the same questions here, but we feel pretty comfortable. But we do have to figure out with the men how best to engage them. They had pretty good attendance, but less so than the women, and their motivations are a little bit differently
Yeah,
little
no,
bit
that's-
different.
I think it would be interesting to do some stratifying analysis.
for our statistician there. Is there anything else you want to say? Because I know there's a question in the back, but I want
Maybe
to.
there is a subgroup that just went way up. You don't know, but that's just the problem.
Yeah, I'm not based on the research science because I am the implementer in the community level. So what I observed that the couples who change their behavior and day-to-day life and norms and everything, then the other neighbors, they are eager to change themselves because they are satisfied with the relationship, they are planning well, and they seems different between the previous years and this year's. So that I observe in the community, but I don't have to say about the scientific things.
Yeah. That's not scientific, it's just that potential for, like,
Yeah.
they're already there.
Yeah.
It is related.
Yeah, so we
to what you
definitely,
said, right, your controls had only half the outcome of interest was only half as common as your exposure. So anchoring it on that, perhaps, I don't know, I'm just thinking it out. Yeah,
Can I say something else
Yeah,
about our
sure,
control group? Which I think speaks to some of the difficulty with funding in this field is we intentionally chose our control group because it was adjacent and people did have ties to the control group community, even though it was a separate community. So we anticipated change at some point in the control group, but that also means that when we anticipate change at some point in the control group, it then no longer serves as a pure control group.
that's not
Because-
true.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I've done randomized clinical trials with interventions where everybody improves.
yeah,
But
people
having the
certainly
control-
can
Yeah,
improve.
So
But
I
what-
think you don't have to defend that the control group got better.
What,
What you have is you have a parallel series, and that's why your study is very strong. You're saying. you
what I'm
have to- yeah.
trying to say specifically is that, yes, controls groups do improve because of external factors. What we can't disentangle with our study currently is if the change is occurring because of external factors or it's changing because of what we are doing. So when we've submitted for this next phase, we're trying to see if we can get a pure control group to see what
The
change.
level- I'm sorry to be the pessimist, but it's always difficult to get the pure controls.
especially in Nepal, but anywhere
But
where there's
even otherwise,
so
with
much
all
programming
these
going on.
patients,
Yeah.
That's kind of why I'm saying we could maybe analytically, you have characteristics at baseline.
Oh, yeah, and of the
And-
communities.
And community, so even, for example, in a control group, you say 31%, that's an average, right?
It's a prevalence, but yeah.
Yeah, it's an average. But could you break that down into groups, and if you had a subgroup?
Maybe,
I don't know if
we
you have
have-
sample size, but
yes, so
that's
this
what
is
I'm
the
talking
cluster.
effect quantification.
Our original study, we had 30 communities, double that because we had 2 communities in each, sort of 2 villages in each. So we were able to we did the effect modification, but we had a lot of clusters. Here we have 13 total sites. We have a lot of persons, but we have them located in 10 intervention and 3 adjacent control sites. So we may be limited in terms of cluster size.
Right.
To be able to determine if we have effect modification. The other thing is that the LDAGs in the community sample they're the same. I mean, they're the same community. So it's something for us to think about. Logan, you have a question? Oh, you just throw something out there, like, or a comment, like, you're so awesome.
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
have a question.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So that drop off from the midline, yes, to the follow-up for the controls, do you have any like inkling where that's coming from? For the
Here?
reports of, yeah, and the partner violence, yes.
So we hope it's diffusion
Yeah.
is what we're trying to say, because this is what you want.
Right.
You want in the phase at which this is internal, this is the group-based
Stop.
inside focus type of work. This is what you want. You want the control group because we're not interacting with them at all. There's no outward facing work. Here's what you want to say. So this is the kind of graph you want to see. And many of the findings for the women are sort of similarly divided like that over the time period. And that's why we do have these measurements at different time point, because we can't disentangle, as Ali said, is the control group getting access to lots of other stuff, because they are a totally different community. We do ask, but you can never know for sure, like all that's going on in the other communities. But this is what we want. This is part of our evidence for diffusion at the community level. We see some of that operating through the social networks, but we see a lot going on just by what's happening, really at the community levels.
So different related question, were these cross-sectional, was it panel?
That's a
or
panel.
was it same?
Same people,
Same
panel,
So what was your last follow?
Not too bad.
25%.
I think on average across the groups, for men and women, I think we had like 85%. Does that sound right? 85%
Retention.
at each time point. So
Okay.
some people maybe dropped at midline, but we got them again at end line. and so forth.
So at least like 2 time points, but we used everybody that we could get our hands on, but yeah.
Yeah, this is dichotomous, right, with the experience, yes or no, but you
Correct.
have others.
Yes, as
other
someone who knows how to measure and model this, yeah, we stuck with this as the primary outcome. It's
So the reason I'm
the
bringing that
visually
up
easiest, yeah.
is I think you have a lot of, right, but you have.
It's under review. It's gonna be reviewed
You
on
have the
October 30th.
potential things like trajectory analysis, it's the same. So, you see what I'm saying?
If we have more money-
You have people, so you can remove the intervention. You can use
Yeah.
existing data. And you're gonna get some people who went like this, you may get some people who steadily came down. Some people were already, they're just more resilient, and that would help you kind of understand predictors of response, because it's not a short-term response. The whole idea of diffusion is how sustained it is.
Yes,
And
yes.
are there people who are early adopters and then they forget about it, or are there people who just take it longer, but they sustain it? You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But I think it's a lot, if it's the same people and you have good follow-up, you're sitting on.
Yes, and
Rich
we
data to disentangle using those kind of longitudinal approaches.
have nice network data, but we really in phase 2, we had more of a community network data. So we could see who were very integrated with others, because the one thing that we noticed in our samples in our communities is that they sort of cluster, like groups cluster, religious sub-clusters, there's SES sub-clusters. So understanding in these neighborhoods who bridges racial, ethnic, caste division, who's connected across different little clusters of people who all sort of know each other, but then who are those people? And we, it was quite interesting to see who they are. And they're not all like leaders, they're teachers, they're other people who are what we call bridges. So that's one of the angles that we would like to try to be very intentional with our participation and measuring and documenting diffusion, is to understand how these processes work in the community and who are those people that are bridging, because it's hard to get over these are small enough communities that you can, and we had 2 groups of men, 2 groups of women, but on a bigger scale, you really need more word of mouth, and you need more of those.
Yeah, so analytically, you could do quote-unquote network analysis. where then people get a network score, and then you see that's because then it's a slightly different intervention than you're also trying to see.
It's definitely one of our pathways, and we are trying to quantify that. Yes, that pathway, exactly. So we do have some applications under review. Knock on wood. Abby,
I have a question for Soham.
thank
And
you.
I've been involved in this project for a while now. This I actually don't know the answer to. So you have spent a lot of time interacting with the VFCCs, these spontaneous. So I mean, we've been calling them, spontaneous, people who want to engage with this work. How did you find out that this was happening, that the VFCCs were, like, where did the idea come from? How did you hear about, how did we learn that this was happening?
Yeah, we had several community meetings, like we say ward bela. It's a ward level representatives gatherings. So we discuss about what is prevention and what is the response. So we accessing the local level resource, how they are investing. So it came out that they are only investing for the response, not the prevention. So we discuss and understand that, okay, have to do something for the response mechanism. So after the federalism from 2016, the political system in the local level that changed because of the federal structure as well as the previous village development committee to the municipality structure. Then they also realized that, okay, we didn't thought about the response mechanism. So we, from the project, we proposed that, okay, then you can establish that mechanism. We can say a VFCC for that, because intimate partner violence or violence against women, child marriage, everything, it goes for the prevention, and ultimately it is related to the discrimination, that is means that is related to the violence. So VFCC is trying to establish and operate and run supporting mechanism to the government and the community networks in the local level. In Nepal, if you have a government want to spend money, then they need groups, and they ask for the proposals, then they do technical assessment, then they can have budget to organize community activities. So that is the structure we established, and we are thinking how it could be the sustaining for the long when they declare, till the time when they declare violence-free wards, hamlets, or municipalities. Am I right, Cari? Yeah, I think, yeah.
Perfect. Always, you're always right. Anushka.
I've also been involved. My whole masters have been involved with this project, and I'm confused now. VFCC, these groups that have been developed in the community, I thought because our focus is on sustainability, right? We have worked so much with these communities. We want to ensure that what we have done continues, that our work continues throughout, and communities are violence free. And so that focus was on prevention, but you just mentioned that the focus for the starting of this community groups was on the response. And when I spoke to community members in Nepal, I kept telling them, you should also think about prevention, because everybody just wants to be oh, there's a fight between husband and wife, we have this group and they'll just go and talk to them. But for sustainability, we want to ensure that the prevention work also, continues. Our work with radio programs, our work like flags and appreciation, letters that we have provided and so on. Those are more prevention focused, right? We don't want to just, and I don't know if community members can be police or, government officials saying oh, you hit your wife, you're going to jail or something. I don't know. So I feel as community members, the focus is more on prevention, but I might be wrong. Could you please?
You're not, you're, yes.
Yeah, you can.
No,
Okay.
Soham, this is you.
What I am understanding that our intervention is the prevention, because we choose the community members who have different norms. They have different understanding of the marriages, about the intimate relationships. because you know that if we say marriage, that is a different inverted, I mean, different saying, different thought, different understanding for girls and boys in Nepal. So we selected those, I can say, vulnerable community couples.
Yeah.
Then we started our the curriculum, big change curriculum. Then we proved that after having these sessions, those couples who changed their norms and behaviors and they declared violence-free homes. So diffusion means that change appear and that's accepted change within the community. Then diffusion means we are diffusing that change by different activities as well as the engagement or mobilization of the local resources. That's what I am understanding now. Am I right? I think
You are correct, yes.
So when we were organizing diffusion activity, then we came to know with the government officials and community networks and the individuals and traditional leaders that, okay, we don't have a prevention mechanism. And prevention is better than care. Till the time, only when something happens, some crime or you can say some rape or something, some fighting with the husband and wife and maybe something like that, then the government system of police or court will start acting with the existing mechanism. But before having something, there is no, even the awareness raising campaign is even not there, because they thought that the government official, they think that, okay, when somebody do something, happen something, then we have to act with our laws. But we don't have those systems that we can stop having those, I mean, violence or anything. So that's my understanding. Maybe Cari wants to add more.
First, they already had met it. And then the VFCCs were created as the idea that they should also have prevention. Prevention, yeah. Okay.
And I'll just add one little nuance in terms of how we chose the couple. So in all three, the LDAG, community, and control, they were all selected randomly from our household list following the same criteria. So while many of them were highly vulnerable, these communities were highly vulnerable on purpose when we are very intentional, trying to be very intentional about where we work, but the individuals to try to get some sort of comparability across the three conditions. Just one second. Logan first. Yay, great.
Forgive me if I don't know, I don't really know the culture of Nepal very well, so I don't know if this is a relevant question, but did you have any same-sex couple?
I think I didn't get properly.
Do we have any same-sex or are these heterosexual couples?
Yeah, recently they started those. I mean, the campaign is going on, and 2 or 3 cases they register in the community. I mean, in the districts. So yeah, it's
Register their marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of in terms of the programming, it's very heteronormative,
yeah.
which is a limitation.
And
But it is, yeah. But it's well, gender is much freer.
I just want to add
Yeah.
more of it, because the VFCC, when the prevention work they do directly, for the response, they would recommend to the existing system in the local, like centers, police station, and the others. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, I think-
So, just wanting to get an understanding, because I'm familiar more with India and there are some differences and similarities. Is there the idea of a panchayat at the community level as a what is sort of the local government? Or because it relates to this different committees mushrooming and what autonomy or what access they have to federal funds.
Yeah, before federalism, there was such system in local level, even though those system was not fully recognized by law, but in the local level, especially in the plain land, we have 3 types of land: high Himalayas, then the middle hillside, then the plain land. So in the plain land area as well as some of the hillside, that was the practice. But nowadays there is not. They are forming toll development committee. That's the small committee. It's loose, type of panchayat committee, but that all captured by the political parties. They will act in the local level, and they will communicate it or coordinate it with the ward chair or elected ward member who will responsible for the regional basis in the ward, then the municipality and the federal government.
Just for the other, the panchayat is old
Yeah.
local governance, but in India it's recognized as local governance. And yes, it is also politically connected, etc. But often many of these roles fell, they were considered the guardians of the community. So whether it was fighting over land or someone beating up someone, that's
Yeah.
of the local.
Well, you can
Justice,
you can see the
governance.
mentions to them in the 2000, in our early data at the beginning of the trial, because they were still referred to as, the community leaders. So I'd go to the panchayat for help, but by the end, nobody says that. Because they are,
And the reason I brought that
Observed.
up is because sometimes once you start having, a water committee, the different committees, are they competing or are they working across? That's the only reason I brought it up.
Yeah.
Think of this
It
committee.
is second election after the federalism, after the new constitution. So based on the constitution, the federal government can pass bills to introduce any ethnic or traditional, those type of local system. But it, as per my understanding, but not about this project, but two government, they are starting to establish. One is the Tharu community that border, that same like panchayat system, it's in the plain land, and the another is Madhya province. They also drafting the bill that not the tool development committees or these other things. Yeah, they will work based on the laws, but based on the constitution, but they are recognizing themselves as a government system bylaws. That's my observation.
Yeah, no, thanks, but I'm just carrying those, but that's kind of that part of like Mahila Mandals, right? Those are women's development. And then it becomes gendered, whereas it comes back to this issue of you have to deal with.
yes, well,
So you have to talk to men.
we didn't even get to like the whole mediation system and the judicial committees and and how gender equitable or successful those are. I just want to check, Sharon, do you see are there any questions or anybody online? Okay, perfect. We'll have one more question.
So for the facilitators who are part of the program and the educational aspects of the program, so will they also be involved in the committee formation after that starts to happen, or is it dependent on funding and things like that?
The group facilitator and their role in the VFCC.
In the VFCC, the ward chair is also indirectly involved. I mean, he is the like a guardian or what's it? He also as a advisor of the committee. Then the elected ward member is the member of that committee. Then our group facilitator, he is also a member of committee, and one or two group members who demonstrated change, that they raised the flag and declared their own violence free. They are also in the VFCC. So that's the combine of political elected political leaders, community networks, traditional leaders, and our group facilitators as well as the group members. They are involved in that committee.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Pleasure.